Hey everyone, it's Zach with Palantir Research. Palantir is solidifying its recognition as an AI player and authority in the space with an upcoming AI Safety Summit, and that's announced to take place in the fall here in the UK. Palantir has mentioned briefly only that they will attend, but I'll go over the summit and my thoughts on what this means for Palantir. So the UK's Prime Minister Rishi Sunak announced that in November they plan to have a global AI Safety Summit. It'll take place in Bletchley Park, where the Enigma code was actually cracked that helped the Allies understand the German messages back in World War II. Now they're saying the aim of the summit is to start considering what risks AI poses and how to mitigate them, but also create a platform for countries to work together on a shared approach to its development, which I think it's quite intriguing as a proposition, but in practicality, I don't know. And the UK, of course, wants to, toot their own horn that they believe they are a leading nation when it comes to the artificial intelligence movement, and this conference is obviously a way for them to try to solidify their standing in the world, or at least gain recognition of being one. Now, here's where Palantir is mentioned. They will likely be included, but of course, they got to add the controversially right there to emphasize there's always controversy for some reason. I don't care for it as much as long as Palantir gets a seat at the table, but it's just one of those things where if you don't know about the company, you'll take it at its face value. But moving on, they go on to toot their own horn that the UK is a leader in the space, trailing behind the obvious US and China leaders, but we get a little more details on where people in the world think about AI regulation and ethics, and how effective this actually could be. So it's pretty big news that the EU is putting together the AI Act, which will restrict EU members on how AI systems can be used, as well as control systems in place. When it comes to biometric surveillance, emotional recognition, and predictive policing, there is going to be a ban there. Whereas the UK, who has broken from the EU during Brexit, is curious about the surveillance technology, at least with AI. Now, remember, I'm not talking about the people of the UK, but rather the government. And Forbes' reference here that it can go awry is that the Ada Lovelace Institute says the proposed regulations for AI by the UK are going to fail. But either way, all this technology is new and still being figured out, meaning governments and regulators are still figuring out what and what not to do with it. So the limits may be pushed without any framework to stop them. Basically, the credibility of the UK is still being built up, and the summit is supposed to help them in their own eyes. And the article closes out with my thoughts from earlier that it's kind of odd they want to propose coordination so early when domestically it's still being figured out, and for many countries, even the US. But either way, more to come when the summit actually happens. Now, my thoughts on the article and its relation to Palantir. Well, we already know it's funny that they point out Palantir as the controversial guest here. It's actually kind of expected for the summit. Honestly, it's a no-brainer to me that they should be in attendance. They are aligned with Western values, have openly supported the West on the war in Ukraine, as well as coming to the UK specifically in their time of need during the pandemic with their coordination of their COVID response and vaccine distribution. Now, looking at the facts and not Foxglove regurgitating the same stuff, Palantir, who is slated for this fall to possibly get some or all of the FDP massive contract, is going to happen maybe in late September. They've already gotten multiple contracts with the NHS, and most recently with the NHS England Trust, and also the Ministry of Defense is big with the UK and working with Palantir, and that's actually because the UK is the second largest market outside the US, and it's probably because of the military side. It's a no-brainer they should be included at this UK summit, especially around AI, where Palantir literally has an artificial intelligence platform, or AIP, and they talked about that coordination effort. So this is going to be used, of course, if they get AIP to control the accesses between public and proprietary data, as well as third-party and in-house large language models, basically coordinating these accesses with the securities of individual users. So yeah, I think it's important for Palantir to have a say, at least, since they have the technology to not only harness, but also control AI to an extent and loop humans in. Now, when I'm talking about the UK as an AI leader, this is still being figured out, honestly. Of course, as a rich Western country, although some may argue otherwise, quantitatively, the UK has the resources and talent to make this happen. I think it's a good try for them to put this summit together, especially amongst Western allies. And honestly, it doesn't make sense to pursue China's attendance. They can show up, of course, but they'll do what they want regardless what happens here. But what are your thoughts on this AI Safety Summit? Do you think it even matters, and do you care if Palantir is in attendance? Let me know below, and I'll see you in the next video.